This is a do-over for me, just to be perfectly honest. I love do-overs. I don't know about you, but I'm grateful for do-overs. Last weekend, I wasn't on my game. I joined the bishop in Chattanooga for the ordination of a brand new transitional deacon. And my colleague at Chattanooga said, don't worry about the gospel book. I've already marked the book. And so I said, okay. So when it came time for me to read the gospel, the acolyte took the book out to the center of the aisle. I opened the book, and she had marked the page, but there were 2 lessons on it. She had not marked their lesson. So I figured I got a 50-50 shot. And I preached the first one. And then our bishop got up and gave one of the most beautiful sermons I've ever heard on the other gospel lesson. It didn't stop there. So Sunday here at the cathedral, I was in a hurry. I had a class to teach, and I raced in. And some of you who were here may have noticed that when I got up to read the gospel, I tapped my hip, then I tapped my hip, then I tapped my hip, and I realized I didn't have my microphone on. And so poor Matthew Arning had to stand there about this far from me, and while I tried to project loud enough for everybody in the nave to be able to hear. All I can say is thank God for breath mints, and thank God that mercy always trumps justice in God's economy. So, and mercy is just what I want to talk to you about today. Jesus' mercy. Today's gospel lesson is an abbreviated version of the story we heard a couple of years ago about this time from the Gospel of Mark. And it is from Mark that we're able to fill in some of the details of the story found in this morning's reading. Today we find a Jewish religious leader whom Mark tells us was named Jairus, a man of power and prestige, a ruler of the synagogue, a pillar of the Jewish community, a man who has access to all the best care his community has to offer, but is desperate because despite his standing, his 12-year-old daughter has died. And in desperation, he will do anything to save her, even if it means prostrating himself before a man whom he and his fellow rulers despise and are trying to destroy. Yet here he is, asking for Jesus' help. We're also introduced to a woman who has suffered one of the most debilitating health conditions imaginable. She has been bleeding nonstop for 12 years. She's been to all the doctors. She's done everything they told her to do. She has spent all her money trying to find a cure, and all to no avail. Even more devastating, because of the Jewish purity laws, she is considered ritually unclean. And she may not touch anyone, and anyone who touches her is considered equally unclean and may not participate in any of the Jewish ritual ceremonies or enjoy the fellowship of friends and neighbors. She is a virtual leper, isolated and unwelcomed in any quarter. Can you imagine what she must have gone through? But she believes that if she merely touches the hem of Jesus' garment, she will be healed. And then there are two blind men. Jesus has healed the Jewish man's daughter and the woman who has been hemorrhaging for 12 years. He's now moving on, and 2 blind men follow him, calling out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." And Jesus restores their sight. In each of these instances, Jesus granted the healing that each individual sought. And to be honest, most of us who preach in the story there, focusing on Jesus' immense love and mercy, and perhaps charging our listeners to show such mercy to those we encounter along life's way. That's a powerful and appropriate takeaway. But if we stop there, I think we only get a partial insight into the message Matthew is trying to convey. In doing my research for today's sermon, I came across another interpretation of this passage which gives us a more complex and subtle understanding of Matthew's account. Professor William Barclay points out that in the first instance, the Jewish ruler came to Jesus when everything else had failed. He had no doubt tried every kind of doctor and every kind of cure and approached Jesus only in sheer desperation, as a last resort, which is to say the ruler came to Jesus from an inadequate motive. He didn't come as a result of his love and faith in Jesus. He came to Jesus because there was nowhere else to go. This man came to Jesus simply because desperation drove him there. In the second instance, the woman who had been hemorrhaging crept up behind Jesus in the crowd, touching the hem of his cloak. If we were reading this story in today's newspaper, we might say that the woman showed nothing other than superstition, hoping that Jesus would perform some kind of magic trick. To believe that touching the hem of his garment it was the same as folks who believe that they can get some kind of cure from the healing power in relics or the prayer cloths offered by television evangelists, always for a small fee, of course. We might say that the woman came to Jesus with a misplaced faith. In the third instance, the two blind men cry out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." Now, Son of David was not a title that Jesus desired. Son of David was the kind of title a Jewish nationalist might use. Recall that many of the Jews in that time were waiting for a great leader, a descendant of King David who would be the conquering hero, who would lead them to military and political triumph over their Roman masters. Of course, we know that's not how Jesus saw himself. And the kingdom he promised was a spiritual one. So we might say that these blind men came to Jesus with an inadequate understanding of who he was, or, if you will, a mistaken theology. So the ruler came to Jesus motivated not so much by faith as desperation. The woman came to Jesus with a heartfelt but flawed faith. And the blind man came to Jesus with a mistaken conception of who he was. Yet Jesus responded to each of them with mercy anyway. I have lost count of the number of times I have met with persons who have found themselves in difficult situations, who have said to me something like, "I just feel guilty about asking for God's help because I really haven't been attending church like I should." Or, "I haven't really spent much time in the Bible lately." Or, "I really haven't given thanks when things were going well." Or, "I just haven't prayed to God for so long. I feel guilty about asking him for his help now." Have any of you had that thought? I have. Well, it seems that it doesn't matter so much to Jesus how we come to him, if only we come. No matter how inadequately or imperfectly we come, his arms are open to receive us. The good news is that Jesus accepts us right where we are and wants to answer our prayers, wants to be in relationship with us, wants to help us discover a life marked by love and mercy and grace. We don't need to wait to ask Christ's help until our motives, our faith, our theology are perfect. It's not how we come to Christ that matters. It's only that we do. And it is in the coming of Jesus, it is in the coming that Jesus' love and mercy will transform our hearts so that we might become instruments of Christ's love and mercy throughout the world. So go ahead and ask. Jesus will be glad to hear from you. Amen.